I am aware that when you file your federal return, you're probably filing your state too. The reason why you can't call the Internal Revenue Service and ask them about the status of your state return, or say, well, they processed my state, I don't understand what's going on with my federal, or they processed my federal, I don't know what's going on with my state, or I received a letter from the Department of Revenue, I don't owe you guys any money. Let's just straighten things out right here, right now. The state typically goes by the state's government entity typically goes by the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue and the Department of Treasury are two different places. So people often get this confused because the Department of Revenue and Internal Revenue Service has the word revenue in both. But surprisingly, they're two different things. And there may be some people who come across this video and say, well, I already know that. But there's also people out there who do not know that. Also, just because you submit your federal and your state return together does not mean that the IRS has any information on your state return. And just because the state has processed your refund prior to the Internal Revenue Service processing your refund, they are not the same. These are two different places with two different processes and two different literally they're two different entities, like two different government entities. One is on a level of the state, one is on a level of the federal. So your state processing maybe a few thousand up to 1 million returns is completely different from the federal government processing almost 30 million and up returns. They're two different places with two different processes, two different levels of staff. So Internal Revenue Service knows nothing about your state return, and they will not provide you with any information based on that. And their time frame has nothing to do, or their time frame and process has nothing to do with the Department of Revenue's time frame and processes. So please, in the future, just treat those as two different things so that you don't call the Internal Revenue Service or the Department of Revenue sounding ridiculous. They're not the same. They're just not. Department of Revenue and Department of Treasury are two different departments under the government. They're two different government branches.